Shout out to everybody in the village. Welcome to another episode of Money Church Sundays. Today we are talking about two keywords, quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative and qualitative analysis. Those two words are something that can change every investor, every business owner, every content creator's life. Just understanding how those two things work and how they intersect can help bring you a whole lot of money. And today we got our brothers Jimmy and Corey. Jimmy's going to bring us a great presentation, but thank you all for being here. What's up, brothers? How are y'all doing?
What's up, brother? How you, man?
I'm here, man.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Yeah.
And before I get going, this episode of Money Church is brought to us by Supplement. Everybody get their supplement.
White one, Kamari.
I'm gonna show you why. I'm gonna show the white one, right? So yesterday, Corey, when me and Jimmy went to the Juvenile Justice Center, I poured a cup of coffee at 4:30 in the morning. By the time we got in that car at 1:30 in the afternoon, this was still hot. Now, it wasn't piping hot, but it was still hot. This thing's the truth. So I don't care what color it is. Black, yellow, green, orange, gold. I can see a rainbow. I'm still getting my supplement on.
I ain't mad at that.
I know Kamari's out of it. That was like Wednesday. We on Sunday now. So
no, that was Wednesday. Yeah, I'm still talking about that.
But it's all good though. And listen, Corey, that day, right? We was leaving a breakfast boutique. He came over like, yo, you got to see, this is still hot. He was excited about it. I'm like, I told you they make it all the time. Shout out to Supplement. I got mine next to me all the time, yo. Like, you know what I'm saying? I try to travel light, but I got my bottle with me all the time.
I ordered mine. Mine will be here soon.
You know what I'm saying? So make sure y'all support Supplement. Matter of fact, let me put the link in the comments too, man.
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments, and I'll also put it in the description, in the YouTube description on the Black Wealth Rebels channel YouTube description. Once we get done, I forgot to put it in there.
Yeah, man. So man, a lot going on, man. You know, I want to say rest in power to our sister Tracy before we get started, man. Still processing that. I want to shout out everybody watching live. I want to shout out everybody in the village and everybody who just reached out in general because like I said, community is everything and everything is appreciated. Shelby, we was just talking about you in a positive way. I was telling Kamari a story, and somehow I mentioned St. Raymond's School, and he said Shelby went there. I was like, oh, I didn't know Shelby went to St. Raymond's. All my folks went to St. Raymond's. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to Shelby.
Listen, Shelby was watching us Friday, right? Giving out flowers to Tracy, and he said he had to stop watching because we were too emotional.
We definitely were. I watched a small part of it back yesterday, and I was like, I almost broke down watching. I was like, let me cut this off, man. Like, and it's us talking. I'm like, yeah. So we definitely were, but
Listen, this is a rough one. We're gonna have to go through it, but we gonna live on and honor her. I don't know if I want to say this, but I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, say it, bro.
We might need to go back to just being New Edition.
No, I'm definitely with that, man. Like I over the last several days, man, me and Courtney have been talking a lot in terms of like just helping each other process what's going on and man, listen.
Yeah,
crazy,
she needs to be with us. We gotta make sure she's protected, bro.
Yeah, bro. Like, but man, it also makes me want to like get out there and do more work, man. Because the one thing
absolutely,
going back through all the footage of the live event and the old events and all that, like she was about the work and even talking to people about what was going on. It's like she helped me do this, she helped me do that. Like, so it's like it's also a little inspiring to hear the stories that people are telling me. Like, oh man, we got to get out and do more, man, and just live
because I'm gonna say guilty of this, but I talk about the bad a lot. Like I talk about the scammers a lot. I talk about the bad side of the Black community, but Tracy represented the good side of the Black community because she was always
about the good side.
To help and inspire and motivate and lend a hand and actually give gems and share resources. There's a lot of people who ain't about that life, man. They say they are. They talk about it, but they ain't living it.
Yeah, man. She lived her raps.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, man. But what's going on with y'all? Everybody watching live. We got a number of folks watching live.
Tell us how y'all living, man.
What up, Bar?
Bar, how are you, good brother, man? Bar gave me like the day it happened. I talked to Bar. Bar told me a quick Tracy story that was like about how she looked out for him and everything, man. So.
And wait a minute, didn't you say Bar went to St. Raymond's too?
No, but I think Bar Bar went to didn't St. Raymond. He go to St. Raymond's. Bar went to a different Catholic school. Bar, you went to Bar, what school did you go to? Was either No, McDevitt. I think he went to McDevitt.
Okay, well, McDevitt, St. Raymond's is the feeder school to McDevitt. But
yeah, pretty much. St. Raymond's was the feeder school to McDevitt. Yes.
Yeah. She was pro our people daily. That's facts. That's facts right there. That's facts.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
All right. Don Johnson's in the building. All right, Nicole. Good morning. Yes, bring back Courtney. She was always an asset to the group. So listen.
Here's the thing about it. Courtney never left, right?
Right. Nobody. Wait. Courtney never left. Tracy never left. Life was just life, and we just said we got to keep doing what we're going to do. So, he went to Doherty. Okay.
Man. Shout to my guy Los. My man Los went to Doherty.
Yeah, Teray went there too. Teray, oh man, a whole bunch of cats.
Okay.
So Courtney never left. And Courtney be busy. Like, y'all don't know this, but Courtney actually runs.
Embarrassing.
Well, no, I didn't even talk about the embarrassing. It's her day job. And I ain't gonna put her out there.
She got a powerful position there too. But
she's busy.
She got to watch what she say. So I know I ain't in that position. I just say whatever I feel like.
Honestly, shoot, some of the stuff I say might get Courtney in trouble.
Yo, I know Carter.
We got to protect our sister in a lot of different ways.
Like they gang CD. All right, my fault, Bar. He went to CD though. Colonel Doherty, man. So, with that being said, today we're going to do a quick class on a qualitative versus quantitative analysis as it pertains to the market, right? So, this will be a short class, but I think it's something that we definitely should talk about because a lot of people don't have an understanding of what the difference is, and this is something I deal with every day. Not only does quantitative and qualitative concern just the stock market, but when you talk about data science, it's a lot of what I deal with in terms of data. So, you guys ready to get into it?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, and listen, if you are in the village, right, this section, the PowerPoint section, will be chopped out and available to you last week, this week, the whole 9, because we have a whole section of things that we call our options 101, because all of these little Sunday PowerPoints lead up to being a better investor and a better options trader, if that's what you want to get into. And if you're not a member of the village, please make sure you join the village, right? And you can join the village for free. We do have a free tier, right? Just go to blackwealthrebels.com to join the village. But let's get into it though. And I'm going full screen, Kamari, so you have to watch the chat,
As always.
That's right. So we're going to talk about qualitative versus quantitative analysis as a complete guide. So it's going to break down how investors and traders use these different analytical approaches, right? So we're going to talk about the numbers and the stories behind them. So that's the overall features of what we're going to talk about. All right. So quantitative versus qualitative in investing. So what is quantitative analysis? So this is a numbers-driven approach that relies on hard data. So a lot of the things that we've talked about in this series already, such as PE ratios, things such as return on equity, which is ROE, revenue growth trends, earnings reports, mathematical valuation models, things that deal in direct hard data, numbers, right? Larry June voice, numbers. But listen though, one of the things I want to say as we get into this talk about quantitative versus qualitative data is that, I'm going to say this every week, when we talk about the stock market, you're buying ownership of a company. You're not just buying numbers on a board that mean nothing. It's ownership of a company. Even if you have one share, you are an owner of a company. But behind that company, you have quantitative data and you also have qualitative information about that company. So when you look at it from an investment standpoint, you look at it one way, and from a trading standpoint, you look at it a different way. Because even as you're trading, and we're talking about trading options, you're talking about you control the equity of a company. So now we have to look at that from a quantitative standpoint, but also a qualitative. So let's get to what qualitative means. This is the story behind the numbers, right? The business model strength. What kind of business model does that company have? Who is on that management team, right? What is their reputation? The brand power and recognition, and what competitive advantages do they have? Or as Warren Buffett talks about, what moat does that company have? So the thing about it is some people take a quantitative approach. Some people take a qualitative approach. I personally believe that you need a little bit of both. You can't have one without the other. When I think about quantitative versus qualitative, there's a couple things that I think of. One is Corey's profession as an educator, right? Because I've been through school. I've been through so much school. It's like a little triggering to even say that. But but the thing is, we've all had teachers that will give you a lesson, give you a multiple choice test, and whatever your score on that test is, that's pretty much how they grade you. They grade you literally off nothing at all but the test, right? So that would be more of a quantitative. What did you score on this test? That's your grade in this class. But I've also seen teachers that understand that education is more nuanced, and some students are terrible test takers, right? So they take a more qualitative approach, and they create environments where you can rely on more than just a test score to give someone a grade for that class. I mean, Corey, maybe you want to weigh on that as an analogy, but I think teachers that understand that, to me, are the better teachers. The ones that understand that you can't just look at a test score. There's much more behind a student than a test score.
Yeah, because some students, like I grade my classwork as 3/4 of what I grade my test score. So a lot of teachers will grade the test scores double of whatever they do for their, like the test scores will be 50% of your grade and your classwork will be 25%. Well, in my class, it's 50-40, right? It's 50 for the test scores, 40 for 40 for classwork, and then 10% for just showing up. Like for those students who show up, you get an extra 10%, right? You can't get an A in my class unless you show up, right? So I always make attendance part of my grades because I always want to make sure that, the first part of being good at anything is showing up every day to do it.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But that is what I thought of as I was preparing this PowerPoint. I was thinking about like different industries outside of just finance, where you talk about quantitative versus qualitative approach, and how that matters.
So by weighing my classwork heavier, it gives my students who aren't great test takers a chance to get a better grade.
Yep. So I think when you look at a company, when you look at an investment, you also have to take a quantitative and qualitative approach. I also think about this in relation to, say, basketball or hoops, right? I watch the Warriors, and they go through, their run as the most recent dynasty in the NBA. And everyone that you talk to in and around that team talks about how Draymond Green, right, does things that don't show up on the stat sheet, and he's the heart and soul of that team, right? So from a quantitative standpoint, he's not putting up the numbers of Steph, or when Clay was there, Clay, right? Or, Butler's there now. He's not putting up those numbers, but he does things that don't show up on the stat sheet. That's part of the narrative of that team.
Well,
so
like
he's more
people up in the locker room?
Huh?
Like beat people up in the locker room?
Hey, some said that helped the team though, because the guy that he put his hands on, nobody liked, right? So that kind of brought the rest of them. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying something I read, but what I'm saying is I don't condone violence, but sometimes what did T.I. just say? He said sometimes people don't appreciate your piece until they see until they see a little bit of violence, then they appreciate your piece, right? So anyway, I say all that to say this though. Qualitative and quantitative are both important. You can't just look at one without the other. And a lot of people only care about quantitative, right? And specifically when you talk about investors and traders, right? There's a whole group of folks called quants, right? And all the quants do is look at the numbers, right? Shout out to Taylor from for Billions, man. She was like, a popular quant on TV, right? But that was all about the numbers. Taylor was a beast. That's probably my favorite character on that show, by the way. I don't know. I gotta think about that. Who's your favorite character on Billions, Kamari? Don't say Axe either.
No, not Axe. Axe's rival.
You like him? You would like
Chuck.
You would like Chuck.
Chuck was the man.
I'm not going. I'm going to say.
Not a joke. I'm about to say the reason you like Chuck is because he let the. Never mind. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can we at least give an honest opinion on it? Like, that's not what you just trying to make jokes out.
No. You like that Chuck mess with the SWs, but I digress though. Let's move on.
No, Teller was up there. Chuck was good. I like the
number 2 was cool too though. He was hilarious.
I was about to say the drunk, I can't remember his name. The drunk boy that was right underneath X was my guy, man.
All right, so in the chat, as we go through the rest of this class, who's your favorite character from Billions? For those of us that have watched Billions, put it in the chat. But anyway, let's move on.
What was X's right-hand man name?
Wagner. Mike Wagner.
Wags was my guy.
Yeah, Wags might have been the best character. But anyway, in the chat, let us know your favorite character from Billions.
For the record. But for the record, my favorite was Kate. For the obvious reasons.
Also, for the record, Kamari, I did finish Raising Canaan, so I'm all caught up now. So
cool. So we can talk about that.
All right. So now, with that being said, let's move on to the rest of this class, though, because Kamari was talking crazy to me the other day because I wasn't caught up, but I'm caught up now. Anyway, quantitative versus qualitative in trading, right? In trading specifically, right? So there's technical analysis, which we've talked about, right? Chart patterns and price actions that drive decisions, and you have statistical models. Algorithmic approaches identify market inefficiency. So when you see us guys looking at our charts and going through our charts and looking at what's going on, that's all part of a quantitative approach. Now, qualitative, you talk about the news sentiment, political events and headlines that influence market psychology. So if you're someone who only cares about quantitative and something happens in a headline, you're going to miss that because all you're looking for is the quantitative approach. Shout out to Ray Gun, man. Ray Gun, listen, man, Ray Gun always supports, man. Salute to Ray Gun.
Thank you, Ray.
Appreciate the super chat, beloved. But if you're only caring about quantitative, then you're missing on the news sentiments, and you can be looking at a chart, and all of us have had this happen. Specifically in Trump's first term, it was real prevalent where main man would go on TV and say something, and it would affect everything, right? And that's more on the qualitative side. Also, behavioral factors. Understanding FOMO and panic selling provides trading edges, right? So FOMO, fear of missing out. But you get the edge when you start to understand how people are operating in the marketplace that have FOMO. So again, news sentiments and behavioral factors are more qualitative, and then technical analysis and statistical models are more quantitative, right? And by the way, statistical models, I talk to people a lot of times about me writing models, right? I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I said, I'll write a model behind that. And a lot of times when people look at statistical models, they're thinking that it's something that is super complex, and it can be. But a model doesn't have to be super complex. If you open up your Excel sheet and use a formula in Excel, and for all intents and purposes, that is a statistical model, right? 1 + 1 = 2 is a statistical model. So don't be fearful of the term statistical model, because all of us in some form or fashion, I shouldn't say all of us, but a lot of us have used statistical models, right? So remember, quantitative is more about the numbers, qualitative is more about the story. Now, I didn't write this part in the actual presentation, but dealing in data science, the one thing I want to say is that under quantitative, there also are 2 subcategories. One is a continuous variable, and the other one is a discrete variable. So a continuous variable, let's use real estate because that's most of the models I work in, is when you're like measuring something that can, that just goes on and on, like square footage, right? It can be from 1 to a gazillion, right? Discrete can be something that's either like 1, 2, or 3. Then under qualitative, you have 2 subcategories, one known as nominal and one known as ordinal, right? So nominal is something that's a descriptive with the qualitative, like what color is it? Red, green, blue. And ordinal is measuring those descriptives. Is it first, second, or third place, right? So I didn't put all that in there, but I'm bringing it up for a reason, right? Because when you talk about going down this rabbit hole of quantitative versus qualitative, you can go deep down the rabbit hole, but we're going to keep it at surface level for this because we're talking specifically about being an investor and being a trader, right? So
it's similar to what I do when I measure frequency, intensity, and duration. It's the same. Mm-hmm. It's the same model. It's like qualitative and qualitative. Frequency is quantitative, where I'm just measuring the number of times something happens. Right? And then intensity is the more qualitative, where how does it feel? At what level does it reach?
Absolutely.
Duration is qualitative again, which is, quantitative again, which is how long did it happen for? You know what I mean? So these are, I do the same thing in my thing. I do, both in my line of work also.
And both are important, right? So just comparing the approaches, right? When you talk about quantitative, we're talking about financial ratios, valuations, right? You may use charts, indicators, algorithms. So when you see people say put together a pitch deck or something, like the quantitative information is going to be like, the bar charts, the pie charts with the numbers and things of that nature. Qualitative, you're going to start talking about things such as the brand, the leadership, the innovation, the news, and it's something that contributes to that. Now, the thing about it is combining both methods gives you the best result. When you can integrate all these approaches together as an investor or a trader, that's when you kind of like take it to the next level, right? So, but here's the thing that I don't like, and I see this a lot of times online, specifically on social media as it pertains to like, investing in Black wealth. People like to do more qualitative work than quantitative work. They don't really give you any sort of objective data when they say the things that they say. To me, quantitative should be the foundation, right? Right. Numbers give you the objective baseline, right? So if we're talking about sports, for example, I can say like, the Knicks are down 0-2 to the Pacers, right? That is objective. That's an objective fact. Now, The qualitative part is why are they down those?
Yeah, the reasons why.
So now I got to give you the reasons why, because Howard Burton is a hoops terrorist right now. He's going nuts on them, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's reasons why, but quantitatively and objectively speaking, they're down 0-2, right? So when you are able to look at a company and do the same thing, give me the numbers, and then say, okay, well, tell me the story behind the numbers, why this actually makes sense. You combine those, that is a superpower, right? That is an absolute superpower. I know a lot of people who are quantitative traders, and they do okay. But once they realize to understand the qualitative part, they just take off. And I actually know more of the other, where people come into it just looking at the news and are qualitative traders. And look, Corey was like that. I've watched Corey become better as a trader, because in the beginning, all Corey cared about was qualitative information. Once Corey started, and shout out to everybody, along that journey, right? Shout out to Passa, and all the different folks that
I wouldn't even look at a chart. I never looked at a chart until I started messing with them.
Yeah, and they got Corey, and there's a lot of folks, Jay, Passa, who else, Corey? They got Corey into the charts, but once Corey got into the chart, Lance specifically, because Lance really took time with Corey. Shout out to Lance, who's a legend. But when it took time with Corey and told him the quantitative approach, he combined the two things. That's when he became a better trader and started getting to the bags. But because now
so it's funny, real quick. I was with Shelby yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, he's in the chat right now, but he was talking about, he can look at the charts and then everything's good. He's like, he knows how it's supposed to go. Then somebody comes and makes an announcement, whether it's the Fed chair, the president, war, whatever, then boom, it reverses. It goes a whole other way. And he's like, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that. So it's funny. We literally just had this talk yesterday.
That's crazy. But that's the thing, right? Qualitative is very important. Like, you got to understand what's going on in the world. I've seen certain people have setups that work perfectly, and they don't realize that the Fed chair is getting ready to talk. One of the things we talk about is, and shout out to Dina, because Dina always reminds us in the our trading chat in the village, like, yo, such and such is speaking today, be careful, right? Because if you're not aware of that, your setup could be perfect. And next thing you know, it works one or two ways when the Fed chair speaks every time.
Every time.
We go into
and that's not new, by the way.
Yeah,
that was with the white boy Jerome, back to what's his name?
Janet Yellen, all of them.
Yellen.
Everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Listen, man, they open their mouth. Either we going to the moon or we going to downtown to apply for some benefits. We going one way or the other. All right. So, with that being said, let's take a specific example, right? Let's look at Apple as from a quantitative standpoint, right? Apple's PE ratio at the time I broke this presentation was around 28. So you pay $1 for pay 28 for $1 of their earnings, right? So that's their PE ratio, price to earnings ratio. Their revenue was about $383 billion plus annually with consistent growth. The dividend yield was only 0.5%. It's not really a high dividend, but it's a bonus for long-term holders of the company. And they also had a high return on equity, have high efficiency and share with the shareholder money. So they have a high return on. So these are all quantitative parts of Apple. When you look at Apple as an investment, this is what the number is telling you. But there's the other part of Apple, right? Some people want to invest in Apple because of what? Qualitative information.
The brand.
Apple has a cult-like loyalty. People line up for new iPhones every year to this day, right?
Apple's a church.
To this day. The ecosystem lock-in. You have iPhones, MacBooks, AirPods, iCloud. Once you're in, it's hard to leave. Do you know how many people I talk to that have Apple products that say, I really don't even like this. I like the other phone better, but I can't leave though because all my information is here, right? I've literally heard people tell me that. So the ecosystem lock-in, right? This is all part of the qualitative story of talking about Apple. Also, the leadership. We talked about this one before. I made a statement that some consider controversial. I said Tim Cook is actually a better CEO than Jobs, right? And it's not comparing the two because they both were needed at the time they were needed for different reasons. But the fact is, Tim Cook has done a great job in terms of running that company. Also, the innovation and strategy, moving into services like Apple TV Plus, Apple Pay, which is more getting into us, not necessarily just selling hardware, but having services that people use. Apple TV, they're first of all, Apple TV is phenomenal. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. I actually pay for Apple TV. Apple TV from a percentage standpoint is better than Netflix, right? they put out content, like, but their content is like their hit to miss ratio is probably the best there is on TV. And this is coming from someone who, you know, my primary devices aren't even Apple, but I do have an iPhone too. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I got the iPhone that uses USB-C, unlike some of us. You know what I'm saying? You know how frustrating it is. I got in Kamari's car the other day, and I'm like, yo, let me charge my phone. I got the lightning joint. I'm like, come on, man, what are we doing with this, man? Anyway, I'm sorry.
I can't afford your fancy phones, man. I'm not rich like you.
Here we go. Look, that was a sidebar, man. Y'all got to get off the lightning cables, man. Y'all got to, you know, at least get to the point where there ain't no lightning cables.
Listen, man.
But I digress, though. I'm going to tell you how much
I'm talking about us poor people, man.
Here you go. You wealthy beyond measure. But listen, here's the thing, though. Apple TV Plus, when I realized that Apple was really going to try to run the backup with Apple TV Plus, everybody knows about Apple's walled garden. For those of us that use Android, Apple TV made an Android app, right, for Apple TV. So even if you're not an Apple user, they want you to subscribe to Apple TV. You can put it on all of your Samsung or Google devices. I was like, wow, they don't do that usually. Apple doesn't make Apple software for Android, but with Apple TV, they do. So they are really trying to make that like its own side business. So I say that to say part of the qualitative part of Apple is they understand that there's a certain level of hardware they're always going to sell. But if they can get into the service-based business with Apple Pay and Apple TV Plus, that can be a whole other, you know, it probably already is billion-dollar business under their portfolio. So when you look at buying Apple, you're going to look at the numbers in terms of what they're paying in a dividend, the PE ratio, all those things, but also look at the story that's being told with Apple. That's the qualitative side of the approach of looking at the investment of Apple.
But Jim, real quick, let's not zoom past that point, right? I would love for you to talk about the qualitative and the qualitative point of them making an app for Android just to sell Apple TV.
Yeah, because a lot of Apple's products, right, they have a lot of different services. They have their own books, they have their podcasts, all those things. And they've never taken the time. They always keep it under the umbrella of you have to have an iPhone to use this service. Even Apple Pay right now, you can't use Apple Pay unless you have an iPhone, which makes sense. And the idea is everything is integrated. Everything is under this walled garden. We control it so we can make the experience a premium experience. But with Apple TV Plus, they invested a lot of money into that. I mean, look at the stars they have on their own platform. And then it's like, okay, you can get Apple TV Plus as an application on an iPhone, obviously, but we're going to create one for our competitive device. So even if you have Samsung, we still want you to enjoy this content and we want you to pay this monthly subscription, right? As it says on the slide, that's recurring revenue. If they can build that up, and they don't have to necessarily catch Netflix, because remember, Netflix doesn't sell iPhones, MacBooks, but they're competing. Think about this. Apple is competing with Samsung, right? Their number one competitor in terms of smartphones. But now they're competing with Netflix. Some of these big companies, and you talk about a qualitative standpoint, look at who their competitors are. Speaking of that, let's talk about this, right? I'm going to get to in a second once I go over this quantitative trading analysis, right? Because I want to get to another company. But I want to talk more about the trading aspect, not just the investment aspect. From a quantitative standpoint with Apple, right, you look at things such as 200-day moving average, right? Above the 200-day moving average is usually a bullish signal. We're talking about charting. The RSI, the relative strength index, is something I always look at 70 plus, overbought, oversold at under 30. So once it goes to under 30, that's when we're looking for it to come back up. If it goes above 70, we're looking for a drop. The MACD, right? All these are things that you look at if you're talking about trading Apple, right? We want to look at the signals on the MACD, the volume spikes. We always look at volume, right? If the volume spikes on Apple, we talk about a strong move to, you know, whatever way it's going. So anything I say here is for educational and informational purposes only. This is not investment advice. I'm just talking about ways to look at Apple, quantitative and qualitative. So from a trading standpoint, the qualitative part of Apple, things such as the earnings call. We talked about that in the past. Kamari actually gave you guys a couple episodes ago a cheat code on earnings calls. I'll just tell you in narrative form what he said. He said you can actually get the transcripts of earnings calls. Take those transcripts, drop it in the chat GPT and have chat GPT summarize an earnings call. That was a powerful thing. I don't know if people even understand how much game you gave him with that. Supply chain news, chip shortages, the China tensions. That's all part of qualitative. Currently, even as of Friday, there was a debate about whether Apple has to pay tariffs or not. That's a qualitative story that can affect what's going on from a trading standpoint, right? Product launch events, iPhone Day always moves the needle, even if it's just hype. And most of the time it's just hype. But again, is something that moves the needle. I remember Corey used to make this trade years ago, right? I don't remember the exact date, but it was like when the weather started getting hot, Corey would trade like Six Flags. Yep. make a quick bag with Six Flags, and then right before the weather broke and everybody went back inside, sell out of Six Flags. And he said always do it. And I'm like, that just seems very simple. It seems very it's a qualitative thing, but it just makes sense. Yeah, every year we trade Six Flags. But anyway, let's talk about Amazon. This is what I'm talking about when we talk about narratives, but also from a quantitative standpoint, their PE ratio was 100 plus. Remember how low Apple was? This means that people are willing to pay so much more for the earnings of Amazon. That's a quantitative, objective fact. People are looking at Amazon, and this is because historically, Amazon has been a high growth company, right? 500 billion plus of annual revenue, and it's still growing. Even at the massive scale that Amazon exists at today, it's still growing. AWS has high margins. AWS is the profit engine of Amazon. For those that don't know, for those who think it's just them buying stuff on the that's really just a data collecting thing. AWS is where their bread and butter is. But the fact of the matter is, people are willing to pay more than 100 plus for the earnings of Amazon. So from a qualitative standpoint, they have market dominance. Amazon basically is e-commerce in the US. And I know some people are going to say, what about this and what about that? Yes, there are other e-commerce companies. But from a market share standpoint, I'm saying, they top two and they not two. Let me just gonna put it that way, right? AWS's leadership, they power Netflix, right? So let's think about that. Netflix, a whole other gazillion-dollar industry, is powered by AWS, right? Their logistics infrastructure is second to none. Prime Delivery is built to scale and it's very, very hard to copy. How many of us are Prime members? If you're a Prime member, let me know in the chat if you're a Prime member, right? Corey raised his hand. Come on, are you a Prime member?
Put a one in the chat if you're a Prime member. Put a one in the chat.
Members, right? And I'm not telling anybody to go out and buy Amazon. I'm just telling you the power of Amazon, right? You talk about AI, drone delivery, Amazon Go. They're constantly trying to invent things and move the needle forward. So they're also someone that's always looking for innovation. They try things. Everything doesn't stick. Everything doesn't work. But it is what it is.
They own NFL. They got a package with the NFL.
Yeah.
All right, I also think Amazon can move into logistics really easily and and take up some of the space from FedEx and UPS as well.
They already do. That's already done.
But it's not widespread. It's not widespread.
I don't know if you've ever looked into their logistic infrastructure. If you read their 10K, they already have done that. That's like, I don't know if my camera went out or not. Can you see me on my camera?
What's that?
Can you see me on my camera? Because I know my camera over here is looking a little crazy. Like,
you just froze.
All right. Well, you can still hear me though, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm just gonna keep telling my story, man. What I want to talk about with Amazon, this webcam is wow. Let's see, said the blind man. And from a qualitative standpoint, is when you think about Amazon, even more so than Apple, right? I was thinking about this. I was like, who is Walmart's number one competitor? Is Amazon, right? Amazon is literally out here competing with Walmart. They're competing with Netflix.
Everybody they ops.
They're competing with Spotify, right? They're competing literally everybody is their ops, right? I was thinking about the fact that they sell like Kindle devices, they sell the home speakers. They are literally competing with Google. They're competing with Netflix. They're competing with Netflix also while being Netflix supplier, right? They're supplying Netflix AWS, but they're also competing with them by having their own streaming service. Like, they literally are in almost every space. From a qualitative standpoint, that makes that company interesting from if you using it as part of your investment thesis. But also when you look at it from a quantitative standpoint, the numbers are there too, right? So they are kind of really an interesting company, man. And to think that this all started from selling books is like, it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. All right, so quantitative trading analysis, support and resistance, right? We always want to look at support and resistance. Price bounces at key levels, right? The moving averages, we already talked about that. RSI and MACD, we talked about that. The volume, we talked about that as it relates to Apple. So it's the same thing across the board from a quantitative standpoint if we're talking about trading Amazon. So qualitative analysis in terms of trading Amazon, the earnings report. We always want to see what's going on in terms of Amazon and their earnings report, right? The Fed and macro news. Whoa. Shout out to Dina. We appreciate the super chat. And also
Thank
shout to
you.
Dina too, because Dina is a member of the village, and Dina is in our trading chat, and Dina gets busy. She's one of the best traders we have, so salute to Dina for that as well. Fed and macro news: high interest rates can drag tech giants. Amazon reacts fast. Prime Day or holiday season, man. Listen, I don't even be wanting stuff, and then all of a sudden on my timeline I see Prime Day, and I feel like I got to, you know what I mean?
That's Prime Day is pressure, bro.
Prime Day pressure. Like, you know what I'm saying? You end up buying stuff. I don't need an umbrella, but you know what I'm saying? But it's 60% off. Like, how am I not gonna buy this umbrella at 60% off? I don't even need one. Like, you know what I'm saying? You end up with all kinds of nonsense. CEO comments. One bullish quote from leadership equals rocket fuel. So outside of the Fed chair and all that, you have to watch what the leaders of the company say. That's part of the qualitative analysis of trading Amazon, man. So, key takeaways, not to keep going over the same thing over and over again. For investors, you combine both approaches for a well-rounded analysis. Look at the financial metrics, but understand the story of the business. Please understand the story of the business, because I talked about this in previous episodes. My biggest example of this was Enron, because I am so old that I was around in the markets during the Enron days, because I'm old and washed. But what I do remember about that, and this is often my example because it's the best example I have, I remember asking people how Enron made money. And I remember people telling me specifically, I don't know, but the stock is going up, so I'm going to buy it. And that always stuck with me, is because, like, if you don't understand how a business makes money, why are you buying the business? Because, again, this goes back to stocks being equity in a company. If you have a company, you want to know how you make money. If you're running a corner store, you want to know how you make money. What products are selling, what's not selling. If you can't tell me how you make money, why am I even thinking about buying it? Look at your portfolio right now. Go down all of the different companies you own in your portfolio. Hopefully you don't have 150 of them, but look at all of them. Think about how they make money. If you can't answer that simple question, then you have to question yourself, why are you investing in that company? Anyway, for traders, the takeaway is this: rely on quantitative methods for execution of your trades. Stay aware of qualitative factors that can cause a rapid market shift, but understand how the quantitative side works as well. And if you are a beginner, not investment advice, just thinking out loud, start with basic quantitative metrics. Gradually develop qualitative judgment through experience and market observation. If you're going to be a trader, you have to be a trader. You can't say I trade and not really be in the trenches, watching the news, seeing what's going on, seeing the numbers. So that will be my advice to you for beginners. You know what I mean? Get into that space. So that's what I have in terms of qualitative versus quantitative. My camera is wilding right now.
Yeah, you Elsa right now on the camera, bro. You frozen.
I'm about to jump off and jump right back, fix my camera and whatnot. But that is the presentation nonetheless. Appreciate you guys for listening to me, qualitative versus quantitative. Let me remove this from the stage, and I'll be right back, y'all. Let me come right back in.
While we're waiting for Jim to come back, what questions does anybody have about qualitative and quantitative analysis as it relates to your trading and your investing in your everyday life?
I'll give y'all some examples, right, of quantitative and qualitative, right? So quantitative, right? What I'll do is I'll look at seasonality, right? Quantitatively, what happens during seasons over 3-month spans for companies, right? That is a quantitative analysis, looking at their numbers over a 3-month period with how they move, right? That is a quantitative analysis. Then qualitatively, I'll look at the companies as it pertains to the current market cycle, right? So let's say over a 10-year span, from what are we in May, from May to August, Apple goes up 5% every year. And normally I would just take that trade without looking, right? Because, Apple is a great company and they go up 5% between May and August, right? That's easy money, right? Quantitatively, that is not easy money right now because of the tariffs and everything that's going on. I mean, qualitatively, that's not a great trade right now because we don't know what's going on with the tariffs and all of the other stuff that's going on, right? So quantitatively, I would normally just go ahead with seasonality and just take the trade. But because of the qualitative stuff, because of all of the stuff that's going on with our government, We don't know what's going on with the tariffs. We don't know what's going on, whether or not they're going to have to shift because of the new regime and how, things are working with that. Trades that used to be easy are not easy anymore. You can't just take the trade because of the current environment that we're living in, as far as the market cycles, right? So those seasonal trades, those seasonality trades, they no longer have the ease that they used to, right? So actually, your boy is costing me money, because I love to take seasonal trades. For real, seasonality trades were a big reason why I'm a swing trader, because all I got to do is look at the numbers over 3 month, either quarterly, or I look over either 3 or more 4 month span, and look at if I see a company and I know it's a good company, and I know 9 out of 10 times or 8 out of 10 times over the last 10 years that they move up during that season, I got an 80% chance of winning that trade. You see what I'm saying? But now, because of the qualitative stuff that's going on, I can't take those trades with any confidence.
Yeah. So let me get to these comments. Cookie says, Tim Cook following the plan Steve left for him, but I'm not taking anything away from him though. Yeah, I mean,
following the plan is important.
but also what I would say is he's not necessarily following the plan, because he kind of changed the way he approached that position, because he stuck to what his specialty was, right, which was logistics and supply chain, right, and made them stronger there. He wasn't the one that was going to give the inspiring speeches and all the different things that he it's almost like a quantitative versus qualitative approach in terms of how they run the company too, just thinking that out loud. But I just say that to say that he's really done a great job. But both people were needed in the time that they were needed to kind of take that company to where it is now. A literally $1 trillion company. It used to be a hyperbolic thing. People say it's $1 trillion.
Almost 3 trillion.
But I remember it used to be a hyperbolic thing, and now it's like a reality. We literally have $1 trillion companies.
But hold on, let's I want to address this, please, Jim.
So is qualitative the macro and quantitative micro? Ooh, that's a great way to look at it. But what I would say is, I think both are both.
Right.
Yeah. So to answer the question more succinctly, it's the numbers and then the story behind the numbers. So quant is the numbers, and then qualitative is the story behind the numbers. So both can be micro and macro.
Correct. Yes. Because there could be a macro story and a micro story. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and the macro story can bleed into the micro story and vice versa.
That's a great question, though. That's an excellent question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. So, what else did Cookie say here? Oh, they are very diversified. You missed the comment up here.
No, I got it, Jim. I did that for a reason.
Okay, I'm sorry. So Jarrell, and by the way, shout out to Jarrell too, man. Definitely appreciate Jarrell. He's a member of the village as well. They're very diversified. Sheesh. Did they do that because they want it all for insurance? I.e., if one market falls, we all have invested so many others, so it won't hurt us. It reminds me of the Jay-Z line. We all be each other's crutches. But I think it's a lot of things, right? So if you read the story of Amazon, and there's an actual book I read. I forgot the name of the book. Everything something or another, but one of the things they talked about is they started with books, and they were so focused on logistics and how to dominate that game. Once they started to dominate that game, and they kind of like knocked out Borders and Barnes and Nobles and Walden Books, they start, they put them in a pack. They packed them up. They start smoking on Borders. So
they definitely packed their ass up.
But the story goes, they were in meetings and was like, well, if we could do this with books, our system of logistics and how we've done this, we can kind of do this with everything, right?
But not just logistics. It was also their system of data and how they collected data and how they
But I'm talking about
the customer.
What I'm talking about is literally from the book. It's the book. It's called Everything. I'm gonna tell y'all the name of the book because I actually read a book on Amazon. Amazon.
Great case study, by the way, too.
Everything. I'm gonna tell you the name of this book. It's a good book though, on it, like the story of how Amazon became what it is. It's called Amazon: The Everything Store. Jeff Bezos in the Age of Amazon. It's called look at the book. It's called The Everything Story, but it gives you the kind of the conversations they were having behind the scenes where like our logistics is so sharp that we can kind of implement this in different spaces. So I think it's the fact that they feel like they can dominate and get market share. And also they're a super growth company. So they always have to be looking for ways to continuously grow that company. And then we look at like, you know, their logo, Amazon, A to Z, they want to be the A to Z of everything. They want to be able to kind of be the Walmart of e-commerce. But at this point now, they've gotten so much capital and so many things. They're trying to figure out ways to reinvent brick and mortar, right? And they've tried a number of different things. They're trying to reinvent brick and mortar. So that is a form of insurance, though, by the way. So it's not that it's not insurance. I think that's part of the story, but also part of the story is they feel like they have the technology and the wherewithal to do these things.
So when you say insurance is one word for it. The other word that I would use for it is creating a moat, right? Where other companies can't go into the same space that they're in because they're client in so many spaces, right? So it's called a moat. Like Google has a moat, even though that all these other companies are whatever. All the other companies that tell you they're afraid of Google because Google has way more information than all of the other companies combined.
Real quick, Jim, you asked me a question the other day.
I asked you a couple questions, but yeah, which one you talking about?
My response was Google, but I don't remember the question. Do you remember that?
You did say Google. I think it was like if you had to pick one company to just ride out for I forgot what the question was. Let me think about it.
I think it was something about moat, though. It was something about moat. We was talking about that.
Yeah, it was
Google has the craziest moat because they're everything they do is literally data collection. Everything. Yep.
So I've been thinking about that question, though. I don't know, right? Because for the first time,
what's the question?
I'm trying to remember the specific question I asked you, Kamari. But I'm getting back to what Corey was saying about Google's moat. Google's moat is being challenged for the first time ever. I didn't realize this last quarter, for the first time in history, that they lost a portion of their actual search to chat. ChatGPT is taking a huge chunk out of and I didn't realize people were using it for literal searches now.
Yep.
So this is why if you watch Google I/O last week, they've invested crazy amounts in the Gemini. Gemini is about to be nuts, by the way. Like, if everything they're talking about, and by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube after the show, by the way, and look up Google I/O 2025. What they're doing with Gemini is like, all right, they trying to, you know, all I heard was
they're trying to wipe Chetty off the board.
Man, all I heard when I was watching it, I heard like the music to like clap back, the Ja Rule clap back song in my ear. And I was watching. I heard it in my ears. I was watching. I was like, okay, so they're not playing no more. They bringing out the big guns.
I used Gemini on my phone for the first time the other day. I was like, damn. Oh, damn. Like, I didn't know it was getting busy like this. Like,
what you gonna say, Corey?
But here's the thing about that. That's a whole other war also between Microsoft and Google, which is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, Microsoft has a huge stake in that. But I think the question we were talking about is like, what moat can like last the longest? Or I forgot the exact question, man, because that was a great question. The funniest question me and Kamari talked, not really funny, because a lot of the responses to this question were kind of wild. It was a question I heard in another podcast. Shout out to TRPE podcast. They had asked a question, which, by the way, is a different form of a question that I posed in the book called Sports to Book, which you can find at sportstobook.com. In my book, I had posed a question: which athlete would I wish had Twitter in their heyday? Like Charles Barkley in his prime when he was throwing through.
That's a Friday question.
Like, no. But I'm gonna tell you what I'm getting to. All right, I'm gonna say the question. question.
No, don't save it. All right.
So I asked that question in my book. Like, would I want to have that, or would it be like Muhammad Ali when he was really in his prime and in his bag and he was talking crazy? Did I wish he had Twitter? But the question that they asked on this podcast I was listening to, they asked the question, Twitter is best when we're all going through a collective experience, right? Whether that's like an award show or a specific sporting event, and everybody's watching the same thing and we're all commenting. And the question they said was, what event in the history do we wish we had Twitter for, right? Where everybody would have been on Twitter, like getting their thoughts off about this collective event. And there were a number of things that came up, the OJ trial, 9/11, all kinds of different things. And I was asking Kamari, like, what event did he wish that we had Twitter for? He can, in history, he can go back and see what the collective thoughts were. I thought that was an interesting question.
Oh, what did I say? I think I said King. King
assassination. Yeah,
King or X.
That was the first thing. You know, what's crazy is that's the first thing that came to my mind.
What I was thinking about though, like if we had like Twitter during 9/11, right? Because the thing about it is we do have the one thing I remember about 9/11 is even us black folks, like everybody got mad patriotic during 9/11 because it's like, yo, we hate each other, but y'all ain't gonna be coming up here just like it's like you in the crib with your brother and y'all hate each other, y'all fighting, y'all go outside, somebody says something to your brother, you got a beef with him, right? So I remember everybody being mad patriotic, but the thing about Twitter is this though, specifically black Twitter, we're gonna get these jokes off. And I was like, I wonder during 9/11 how long would it have taken for people to start getting off these jokes?
Right? 30 seconds, bro. Max.
That's what I said.
Kamari gave it an hour. He said about an hour the jokes would have started
30 flying. Seconds, bro. No, man. Somebody's getting them jokes off immediately.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole side note in terms of what we were talking about. But those notes with those tech companies are interesting. Getting back to Jarrell's overall question about insurance. I think at this point, one of the things I think about with all the big tech companies is a lot of them try to compete in spaces and they know they're not going to get a huge market share, but they do it anyway. I feel like it's collusion, right? Because if the government points at you and say, you're getting too big, you're doing this, you're like, well, they got this too. And they got this too. So it's like, I think they got some sort of unspoken agreement. Like, yo, go create a little side business that competes with me over here. I'll create one that competes with you over here. So we can always point the finger at each other when the government comes. That's a conspiracy theory. That's just me. I don't know anything that to be fact, but that's what I feel like, yo. All right, so Cookie says a lot of people who don't own Apple products use Apple TV and Apple Music. The carriers push it when they are selling the phones. Great point. Great point. Great point. I personally use YouTube Music, but I do have Apple TV, amongst other things. So what else we got here? Ray Gun. Dina says, I love Prime. I ain't going to front Dina. I'm one of the people that go on Amazon, and if it's not ship Prime, I'm probably not going to buy it. Like, if you ain't shipping Prime, then what are you doing, yo? Jarrell says his wife has Prime, so he is by association. Frank also has Prime, so folks got Prime, man. Amazon Prime. Think about that recurring revenue you get from Amazon Prime. I wonder what the number is now. Can anybody look that up for me real fast? How much money do they make off recurring revenue from Amazon Prime? Because that's interesting. Yeah, man. And Jarrell, thanks for the great questions too, bro. Thanks for the great questions.
So,
yeah, man,
I know it's Sunday and today is our investment day, but I don't know if y'all have time, but we might have to do an emergency chat or emergency session stream.
Okay.
So Target released their numbers, and remember we were talking about Target and the boycotts.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about that.
Okay.
I desperately want to talk about that because I think this is another learning opportunity, teaching opportunity, because everybody was so up in arms. But it's funny, Jimmy reminded me what I told y'all to do. So I don't always take my advice, but I went and got the transcript for Target's earnings call.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
Uh-oh.
We need to talk about that.
Dog, I'm looking at paying Amazon Prime members, the data from 2015 to 2020. In 2015, Amazon had 46 million people paying for Prime. 2016, they had 65 million.
Damn.
2017, they have 100 million. 2018, it went to 125. 2019, 150. And as of 2020, Amazon has over 200 million people paying for Prime.
Can you say parabolic?
Yo, shout out to Top T, right? I'm going to tell you why Top T is what it is, man. And for those who don't know what Top T is, not investment advice. It's my favorite holding on the market, though. It's the top 20 companies in the S&P 500. It's Google. It's Facebook. Meta. And it's not even Google. I'm sorry. It's Alphabet. It's Meta, right? It's Microsoft. It's Apple. It's NVIDIA. It's Netflix. It's Amazon. It's Nike. It's JP Morgan Chase, right? That's 9 out of 20 right there. And I can go on. But the fact is, you look at that. That's where the power lies, man. Because I'm not an Amazon holder directly, but through Top T, you know what I'm saying?
You are Amazon holder directly.
Yes. I'm big Top T. You know what I'm saying? I probably changed my nickname. I'm big Top T out here, man.
Oh boy.
Hey man, you know I'm a Wu-Tang member, man. I grew up on Wu-Tang, man. I gotta have a gazillion different personalities, man. You know what I mean? Anyway, yeah, I mean, so
So
now
Cookie asks, where do you get the transcripts for the earnings calls? Cookie, just Google. Let's say I just did Target's earnings calls. It'll normally take you to their site normally. Just copy the link and copy it in the chat GBT, and I tell it to analyze and summarize because I don't want to go through everything. And I could get even more funky with it, but I don't. But yeah, that's all it takes.
In the words of DOC, that's funky enough. But
Yep.
But that's a gem right there, man. That right there is worth the price of a annual village membership for the paid members. Because once Kamari said that, I do it all the time. I do it on stuff I don't even care about. Like I just want to see what the
I want to analyze and summarize.
Analyze the earnings call, knowing I could care less about it, right? But you do get a lot of great information, right? You get a lot. So, for instance, one of my holdings is Fold FLD. You know, not investment advice, but you know, I'm a huge fan of the product. So they just had their thing. I took their earnings call, did exactly what Kamari told me to do, put it in there, and I got a lot of great information, right? You know, in terms of their growth. It's a growth company at this point, but I digress. So
what was your biggest takeaway from that, Jim?
They truly are in growth mode, right? They didn't make a lot of money. So they made a lot of money. They made billions in that last quarter, but they spent billions to make billions. But they were able to acquire a number of like new customers, you know, and it makes me think about just business overall. A lot of times people don't want to spend money on their business, which is probably a whole other show. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole.
One of your greatest, we're going to do a show on that, but one of your greatest investments is, if you have a business, is to invest in your business.
Yeah. So, but they're spending money and they're in super growth mode. And Amazon's a great example of that too. If you go back to the early days of Amazon, they weren't making any bread, but they were making money. They weren't profiting because they were putting everything back into the business.
But that's a great point, right? Because when you see all these quote unquote social media gurus talking about Amazon don't pay nothing in taxes, well, they understand the tax code. And what they did was they plowed all their profits back into it. And so that's why they don't have any taxes. But Jeff Bezos did pay taxes, but that's a whole technical thing I'm getting into.
Side note, I was watching a video from it was Forbes. Forbes did a video. I told Kamari about this the other day, which was interesting. This is the last thing I'm gonna say before we jump off here. They talked about value creation and creating value in the country and how much value Microsoft has created, right? And how many millionaires and billionaires. They said that, you know, Bill Gates has given away a lot of his stock over the years. He sold a lot of it as well and has given away a lot of it. He said, but if him and his wife kept the amount of stock that they had from the beginning of the IPO and never sold any of it, main man would have been a multi-trillionaire.
I thought that was Buffett.
No, it wasn't Buffett. It was Bill Gates. They said because Bill Gates, which is unprecedented today, but when Microsoft went public, he still had 49% of all the equity of the company. Think about that. He had 49% of the entire company. So what's Microsoft's market cap now?
It's like 3.5 trillion.
It's 2.6 something because Apple's 2.9. Any given day, it's 3.
He had 49% of that at one point. So it's just a wild observation that you create a company that can create that kind of value. Like the countless other millionaires and billionaires and jobs created is like, you know, it's just astounding. Anyway, just a quick little story, something I saw, just sharing with you guys. We need to create a little place in the village just for the weird YouTube videos that we watch that are interesting from a finance standpoint, and we can just share the YouTube videos.
Yeah, I'm actually about to do that. Well, I'm gonna do a review on it, but I'm about to do that today, actually.
You know, I'm saying sometimes it's like, hey, look, we saw this video, thought it might be interesting. I don't know what we're gonna call it a little section, but we can put a section where we just kind of.
It's called "Do the Knowledge."
Do the knowledge. Do the knowledge. I like that, man. All right, man. So listen, that's what we got.
All right. So I keep mentioning in this, but we need to create a section also, and I'll stick my calendar, my Google Calendar in there, and y'all can just get on my calendar for people to get tutoring for their children for their children to keep their game, or or if they just want to talk about educational issues in general. Because myself and my wife are we've created all of the content for we created the 10-piece content thing. We gotta settle down because we're coming into the end of our school year, which means the paperwork is heavy because we got to get all the paperwork ready for next school year.
Well, Corey, I would love if you and LaJoy would start blogging or doing videos and just start tackling certain things that people encounter about their education. You know, how do like what y'all have done is phenomenal. I mean, how old is your son that's about to graduate college?
He turned 18 on Christmas. He a Christmas baby, so he turned 18.
He like 3 about to graduate college. Like, that's phenomenal, bro. That's phenomenal. What's that?
No, she was just asking me. Just to say hello.
Hey. Happy Sunday. She must have heard me say her name.
She did.
Hey, what's up, man? Real quick though, I want to share one more thing with you guys. For those that are in the village, you probably have already seen this, right? But we do have our camp, right? And the dates have been released, but the location, we're still working on that. I got a meeting on Tuesday to kind of lock down our location, but you know, we have information about our camp, you know what I'm saying, some photos from previous camps. All this is in the village, or you can go to bthcamp.com. That is bthcamp.com. Just kind of see that, but our camp is definitely on the way, man. So yeah, just want to share that real fast. Go to bthcamp.com, but you can also see it right in the village if you're in the village. Registration coming later this week. We're going to open up registration. So when we do open up registration, please make sure you do us a favor just by sharing it. Again, this is completely free. Doesn't cost anything. It's for the youth, but we're trying to get as many, help as many families as possible. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to Jarrell, man. Jarrell saw that and donated already to help us. And that's all needed.
Donations.
I was laughing this morning. I was on Twitter, right? And y'all see that, you know, Kai Sanat got his little streaming school. He's helping these streamers, right?
It's Streamer University. Yeah, that's really out in the world.
Someone on Twitter said, damn, Kai Sanat opened up his school before Umar.
Yo, that's gangster.
So that goes back to to Corey's point that jokes will be flying immediately.
Yeah, jokes will fly, man. Shout out to Umar.
Even if the world is coming to the end, it will be coming immediately. I say an hour to give him a minute to digest, but Corey's probably right. I know Corey's probably right. Because people they be ready to snap at the moment.
Listen, man, people want attention. You gotta get because the faster you get the jokes off, the more attention you're gonna get. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the first person to do it, even if it's crass and crude, they get all the attention. So the people out here is attention sex workers. So
yes, that's a fact.
Sex workers. Ooh,
that's a thing. Somebody write that down. Attention sex workers.
Attention sex workers. I gotta add that to the lingo, man.
Yeah, because I was going to talk, I was going to call them hoes or whores, but that's not even enough, man. They attention sex workers out here.
Isn't that a part of sex worker, though? Isn't that kind of implied?
No, man. Listen, there's some sex workers out here that don't get enough attention.
Folks be out here. Never mind. Because the internet is
I don't know if we should explain that on this show. So
anyway, our overall show today was about quantitative versus qualitative. I hope you guys have got some value from that quantitative versus qualitative discussion. Again, the PowerPoint part of that will be put in the village specifically for specific members to get access to all those classes and PowerPoints. The overall show will be there as well, right? We'll be back on Wednesday for Wealthy Wednesdays. Friday is Freedom Fridays. Our Friday show this past week was a very difficult show to get through, and I was trying to rewatch it because I was trying to remember something, and I realized when I tried to rewatch it, we were so in our feelings that we never did a Bitcoin giveaway.
Are you serious? Oh my God! We
never did our giveaway, man. So what I'm saying that to say this: we're gonna double up. Yeah. Let's double up on Friday. You know what I'm saying? No mace. We're gonna double up on Friday.
That's fine.
Because again, for those that watch the Friday show, you know why, right? All of us are dealing with the loss of our sister, and we were very emotional and just, trying to get through the show itself. So, and that was difficult to get through the show, but we're going to double up this Friday and make sure we do an extra giveaway because, our thing is to give back to the people. Anything that we get, we give back in the form of our time, even money. Everything is about really, really building community. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
And listen, we might institute a new rule too. You might not be able to be eligible for a Bitcoin giveaway if you are not at least a member of the village. The free tier. It's free. It's free. So I don't see why nobody's not in there.
Yeah, everybody should be part of the free, man. Share with your family and friends too, because the village is really about us just building. And I want to share a lot more content outside of just the videos we do. Like I said, I want to share other videos from other creatives that I watch that inspire me or I learn from.
And also, it's a way for us to have a direct pipeline to y'all, direct way to connect with y'all.
These social sites, man.
Yeah, like Jimmy jokes about it, but we're actually serious. We be beefing with these folks.
No, I'm at the point where me and Kamari had a conversation the other day about like not necessarily getting rid of the Black Wealth Rebels, but maybe going by a different name on like in terms of our YouTube, because like we get like put on blacklists for the name Black Wealth Rebels in some parts of the internet, and I've had people from these companies actually say this to me. It's a controversial term. It gets flagged. Sometimes people see it, and you'll see it in our comments sometimes. So if you go through our YouTube videos, like if I made a white wealth channel, what would happen then? it's called
You've already got a white wealth channel.
Advertisers don't really want no part of what.
They don't want no parts of that because of the term, right? So the reason we create the village is really to, and the thing is, we don't make a bunch of money in the village. Like it is what it is. Like we use that to put back to the people. But what I will say is our impact, right, is something that I definitely appreciate, because when we're outside and we're on the streets, people always come up to us. When me and Kamari were at a school on Friday on career day speaking to the babies, and one of the teachers walked up and it was like, yo, I'm in the community, blah, blah, blah. I had never met the lady, and it was my first time meeting her. That's why you never know who's this. We've been out to lunch or dinner, and people are walking up like my kid was.
But that's because Jim and Corey had done a course during the pandemic. And at least two of the teachers, not one, but at least two of the teachers took that course. So this isn't anything new. We've been doing the work. Now we're starting to step it up and publicize the work so we can help more people. Yeah, man. Hey, Kamari, man, you got to release those photos that we got from the joint, man. I know you were creative, so I know that you. What's Kamari's creative name? For those who don't know, Kamari got a side where he Basquiat. He low key wants to be an artist. Like, I am an artist. But you got a whole IG page for your art. That I see. I was like, oh, Kamari really wants to be an artist. So low key. Like, I am an artist, right? What do you mean? Well, I am. I mean, no disrespect, but so here's funny. Jim's an artist too, right? Because the first thing he'll say is his meme work is artwork. Oh, this work. See, what kind of work? No, what kind of work is it? It's artwork. You said that. It's art. No, it's art. It's high art. It's high art. Listen, my wife said I'm an artist. You tell my wife, she gonna say because he be drawing. But anyway, but no, I was in a debate with my wife the other day, right? Because I was telling her how astrology is BS, right? I was like, yo, because when you read these different signs, they throw so many things up against the wall. Like, shout out to Cookie. Shout out to Cookie. Just joined the village. Thank you, Cookie. Nice. But I was telling her, I was like, astrology, right? They throw all these things up against the wall. So if like you're a Cancer or a Virgo, you're a this, you're a that, you're a that. And one thing will be like spot on. And people are like, see, I knew it. I was like, but look at all that. It's like 56 descriptives and like only 3 of them actually match, right? I'm like, I won't agree with that.
Is total BS is because our ancestors studied it. And if they were studying it, there was a reason for them to study it.
And not only that, it's scientifically proven that when the moon and the earth are in different phases, it does create different gravitational pulls. It affects
y'all believe that Mercury being microbreeds.
I ain't saying all that. All
right, now hear me out though.
I will say there is a scientific effect of, because if the moon can move the oceans, it can move your emotions because we're water beings. Y'all
trying to turn this into a high level conversation. That's
not what I'm just saying.
Hear me out though. The point I was making is she was reading my astrology sign, and one of the things in my astrology sign said that
you're an artist.
an artist and a creative. And I was telling her, I was like, I was like, that's not necessarily true. But what she pointed out to me though, she was like, well, you love podding, you love podcasting. Is that not a form of art?
It is. It's creative.
And I told her, I was like, I never thought about that. I don't know if podding is a form of art.
It is. It absolutely is. It's very much a creative function. But listen, y'all.
Nairobi, that's my sister. Hey, Nairobi, how you been?
How you been?
It's been a long minute, Nairobi. Don't let it be another long minute like it's been.
No, much love to Nairobi, man.
We love you.
LOL, Mercury micro braids, mad funny.
No, I appreciate that love too, man. Because right now it's definitely tough.
Yeah. All right, y'all. We appreciate you all joining the Money Church. We might come back later today because I really want to talk about this Target thing. So make sure y'all notifications are on. But we'll be back. We appreciate you all tuning in for quantitative versus qualitative analysis. And we'll be back soon, y'all. Later.
Love y'all. Please stay safe out there, y'all.